Hey guys, tonight we sink into the sun-drenched streets of ancient Rome, where the afternoon hum isn't just from merchants or chariots, but from the collective sighs of citizens surrendering to post-lunch drowsiness. Imagine yourself reclining on a mosaic floor, tunic slightly askew, sandals kicked aside, while the midday sun pours through the colonnades. Welcome to the world of Roman siestas. You probably won't survive this nap craze without envy. It's hard not to, when even emperors took the ritual seriously. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments, because the idea of a shared global nap sounds oddly comforting, doesn't it? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And if you are new here, welcome to Sleepless Historian, your bedtime history channel. Tonight's episode is Roman afternoon naps and the origins of the siesta. The Romans didn't just sleep, they orchestrated their day around rest. Afternoon quiet was a strategic pause, a time for digestion, reflection, and socializing. You trudge past bustling marketplaces in your mind, yet the scent of olive oil and fresh bread beckons toward reclining couches where the elite might discuss politics mid-nap while laborers rested in shaded courtyards. Historians still argue whether the siesta arose purely from climate adaptation or was a deliberate cultural refinement to structure daily life. Quirky tidbit. Some Romans reportedly napped even during public events, reclining gracefully while senators debated. An audacious practice that might earn you a strange look today. But back then, it was sophisticated multitasking. The lesson: Romans understood that rest was as crucial to life as action, so was a philosophy encoded into the rhythms of their cities. The origins of the Romans' siesta are rooted as much in climate as in lifestyle. You trudge through imagined streets under a relentless midday sun, feeling the warmth pressing against stone walls and marble steps. By noon, even the most diligent citizen would find their energy waning, the body demanding pause. Historians still argue whether Romans first adopted the siesta strictly out of necessity or as a cultivated cultural habit, but the pattern is unmistakable. Afternoon rest became an ingrained ritual. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars note that Roman soldiers stationed in hotter regions reportedly napped in shifts to maintain vigilance while adhering to midday rest customs, a fascinating blend of survival and leisure. You can picture a cohort lying sprawled on blankets, one eye open, the other surrendered to the sun, balancing alertness with bodily needs. Climate dictated the practical side of napping. Heavy, sun-soaked afternoons made laborious tasks inefficient, encouraging downtime. Wealthy homes were designed to accommodate these breaks, with shaded courtyards and cooling fountains offering a serene environment. You sense that this pause wasn't merely idleness, but a sophisticated adaptation to maintain productivity, health, and social order. The habit spread from private homes to public life. You notice merchants and artisans pausing in workshops or under colonnades, synchronizing their efforts with the rhythm of the sun. Even in bustling markets, there's an invisible acknowledgement. This is the sacred window for repose. The siesta was more than rest. It became a social signal, a culturally sanctioned moment to reset mind and body. By mid-afternoon, the entire city seems to inhale, collectively, embracing quiet and stillness. You realize that this early adoption of daily rest influenced the rhythms of Roman labor, leisure, and even thought, establishing a practice whose echoes would resonate for centuries across the Mediterranean. Homes in Rome were not just shelters, they were carefully designed stages for life, including the sacred midday pause. You trudge through an atrium, sunlight bouncing off marble floors, hearing the gentle trickle of a fountain that doubles as a natural cooling system. Cubicula, small private chambers, and the triclinium, the dining area, were often arranged to facilitate reclining after meals, offering both comfort and privacy. Historians still argue whether these architectural features were primarily aesthetic or functional for promoting rest, but their alignment with siesta culture is undeniable. Quirky tidbit: some villas had hidden alcoves for napping, tucked behind decorative screens or beneath frescoed ceilings depicting mythological serenity, almost like private nap sanctuaries. You can picture a wealthy Roman slipping away from conversation, curling beneath painted gods, and surrendering to sleep while the household carried on. Comfort was central to the design. You notice cushions, low couches, and adjustable mats, all selected for optimal relaxation. Even airflow was manipulated through open windows and strategically placed atriums to maintain a cool, soothing environment, Rome's version of climate control. The spatial layout encouraged a seamless transition from dining to repose, reflecting the cultural prioritization of rest. Public influence also shaped private spaces. Merchants and mid-tier citizens adapted similar strategies in apartments or insulae, crafting nooks or shaded corners for quick restorative breaks. You sense that urban planning, interior design, and social customs converge to make the siesta not just tolerated, but expected, creating a rhythm of daily life centered on recuperation. By the time you rise from the triclinium in your mind, you appreciate that Roman architecture was as much about facilitating human well-being as it was about grandeur. The very walls of the city subtly instructed citizens: pause, breathe, rest, and restore. Then resume life refreshed. Food and wine were central to the Roman siesta, a deliciously unavoidable pairing. You trudge into a bustling domus, sensing the lingering aroma of roasted meats, olives, and freshly baked bread. A hefty midday meal, gustatio, main course and dessert, followed by a generous pour of wine, naturally ushers in drowsiness. Historians still argue whether Romans engineered the siesta around digestion, or whether the routine merely exploited a physiological inevitability, but the connection is clear. Overindulgence invited sleep. Quirky tidbit: some sources suggest that in certain households, slaves were instructed to gently fan dozing masters, or whisper poetic verses to lull them into the perfect postprandial nap. You can imagine reclining Romans, partially draped over cushions, nodding off while a soft breeze and dulcet tones accompany the wine haze. The interplay of food, wine, and rest was as ritualized as the meal itself. You notice that the portion sizes and timing of courses were designed to coincide with the peak heat of midday, nudging the body into natural repose. Even urban planning reinforced this cycle. Streets emptied, markets quieted, and labor slowed, all harmonizing with the digestive rhythm of the population. Siesta was more than sleep. It was a pause for reflection and social bonding. Conversations continued softly, letters were dictated, and philosophical musings were entertained in a gentle haze. You sense that the Romans understood the body's cues, using the post-lunch lull to cultivate both mental clarity and physical recuperation. By the end of the meal, the city itself seems to exhale, the scent of food mingling with quiet streets and shaded courtyards. You feel the invisible choreography, a civilization attuned to its own circadian rhythm, designing meals and naps as partners in a carefully balanced lifestyle. Social status shaped how Romans approached the midday nap. You trudge through a wealthy villa, reclining on plush cushions, while servants adjust your pillows and a gentle fan stirs the air. Elite citizens luxuriated in long, uninterrupted siestas, sometimes incorporating philosophical readings or private consultations during these restful hours. Historians still argue whether extended naps were a symbol of privilege or a practical use of time, but it's clear that leisure and status intertwined. Quirky tidbit. Some senators reportedly napped in public gardens, half hidden beneath colonnades, while neighbors walked by, turning rest into a subtle display of refinement and ease. You can picture the amused expressions of passers-by, recognizing both the comfort and the quiet assertion of social hierarchy. By contrast, commoners and laborers adapted shorter, more practical pauses. You notice artisans dozing in shaded marketplaces or leaning against fountain edges, grabbing a restorative moment before returning to the afternoon's labor. The nap became a socially recognized act, but the experience differed based on wealth, occupation, and access to private or communal space. Even within the elite, etiquette governed the nap. You sense an unspoken choreography. Who reclines, where, who can speak, and how long it is acceptable to linger. This structured rest reinforced social norms, subtly teaching decorum and patience while allowing the body to recover. By mid-afternoon, the city appears to pulse with synchronized rest. You realize that the siesta was both personal and performative, a biological necessity, a cultural marker, and a gentle reminder that social life and rest were intertwined in the Roman rhythm of daily life. Roman nap culture had its quirks that make you smile as much as they make you yawn. You trudge past a villa where a master naps fully reclined, yet his favorite pet, a small dog or monkey, perches on his chest, adding warmth, companionship, and occasional chaos. Historians still argue whether such habits were common or eccentricities of the wealthy, but they reveal a human side to otherwise formalized routines. Quirky tidbit. Some sources mention citizens napping while wearing sandals, supposedly to keep feet ventilated or simply because removing them felt too much like effort. You imagine a master nodding off, one foot dangling over the edge of the couch, sandals perfectly in place, an almost absurd symbol of comfort and ritual combined. The ritual extended beyond domestic walls. Even outdoor shaded areas, market nooks, and garden benches served as informal nap zones. You notice that urban life accommodated rest in clever ways, blending necessity with social awareness. A merchant might doze in quietly while the shop assistant handled customers, or a street poet could catch a wink between recitations, all following the unwritten rules of public repose. Nap etiquette was subtle but important. You sense that eye contact, posture, and timing conveyed both respect and social intelligence, teaching citizens to navigate public spaces while attending to bodily needs. The siesta became a shared cultural rhythm. Everyone rested, but each did so in a way that honored societal norms. By the time the afternoon sun shifts, you feel the blend of practicality, habit, and quirk that made Roman naps more than idle moments. They were socially, culturally, and personally significant, a gentle choreography of rest woven seamlessly into everyday life. Work and labor in Rome were carefully aligned with the siesta, creating a city that ebbed and flowed like the tides. You trudge past workshops and busy streets where morning vigor gives way to afternoon calm. Artisans pause their chisels, scribes lower their styluses, and merchants close shutters, all acknowledging the sacred window of rest. Historians still argue whether this alignment was formally legislated or evolved organically from climate and habit, but the effect is clear. Productivity and pause coexisted in balance. Quirky tidbit. In some accounts, construction crews would time their heavy lifting and quarrying for morning hours, leaving lighter maintenance or creative tasks for the post-siesta period, a strategy resembling a modern project schedule, ancient style. You can picture laborers wiping sweat from brows, briefly dozing under the shade of a column, then returning to their work with renewed energy. This rhythm also affected scheduling for legal, administrative, and political matters. You notice magistrates and clerks pausing mid-discussion, retreating to shaded atriums or private offices, letting decisions rest in both mind and body before continuing. The siesta thus shaped not just physical labor, but intellectual work, creating windows for contemplation and clarity. Even in agriculture, fields and vineyards operated with consideration of the midday lull. You sense that planting, crops, tending animals, or transporting goods accounted for human endurance in heat, reinforcing that the siesta was both a practical adaptation and a cultural practice. By late afternoon, the city hums back to life, as if awakened in perfect synchronization. You feel the invisible framework, work and rest interlaced to sustain health, efficiency, and social cohesion, a testament to Roman ingenuity and lifestyle design. Philosophers, ever the observers of human behavior, had a peculiar relationship with the siesta. You trudge into a sunlit peristyle where Stoics and Epicureans recline side by side, teacup in hand, or in Rome, perhaps a simple bowl of water, debating whether afternoon sleep strengthens reason or dulls the mind. Historians still argue whether philosophical endorsement of rest was widespread or mostly rhetorical, but it's clear that some thinkers saw napping as a vehicle for reflection. Quirky tidbit: there's a story of a philosopher who deliberately napped in crowded public spaces to test patience and composure in himself and those around him. A human experiment disguised as a nap. You can picture him as serene amid bustling citizens, his eyes closed as merchants and street performers weave around, some amused, some irked, all part of his subtle teaching. For many, the siesta was both a bodily necessity and a contemplative tool. You notice that the gentle quiet allowed philosophical discussions to deepen, not in frantic debate, but in thoughtful observation and measured speech. Ideas were not rushed. Reflection was nurtured in tandem with digestion. Even literary figures and teachers integrated rest into intellectual practice. You sense that mid-afternoon calm enhanced memory, focus, and creative insight, proving that the siesta was as much a mental strategy as a physical one. In this light, napping becomes an instrument of self-cultivation, linking the corporeal and cerebral in uniquely Roman ways. By the time the sun begins its westward tilt, you feel that the practice bridges human biology with reason, crafting a daily ritual where mind and body harmonize, showing that even in rest, Romans pursued enlightenment. As Rome expanded, the siesta traveled with its citizens, adapting to climates and cultures across the empire. You trudge through provincial towns where Roman colonists introduced shaded courtyards and afternoon pauses, blending local customs with their own routines. Historians still argue whether the siesta was imposed culturally or adopted voluntarily, but its spread demonstrates its utility and appeal. Quirky tidbit: in cooler northern provinces, some Romans reportedly simulated the heat of the Mediterranean by reclining near small hearths or sunlit walls to maintain the familiar rhythm of their afternoon rest. You can picture a legionnaire wrapped in a woolen cloak, pretending the northern chill is Mediterranean warmth, dozing for exactly the prescribed hour. The adoption was flexible. You notice that local markets adjusted hours to accommodate Roman patterns, while artisans merged Roman nap practices with indigenous rhythms, creating hybrid customs unique to each province. Even rural estates and farmsteads incorporated pauses, showing the siesta's integration into daily labor, commerce, and social life beyond the city. In some regions, the siesta acquired ceremonial or social dimensions. You sense that afternoon rest became a moment for community connection, brief storytelling, or quiet meditation, a shared were almost ritualistic experience. The pause wasn't merely personal, it reinforced social cohesion, aligning bodies and minds across geography and culture. By late afternoon, the empire seemed synchronized in rhythm. The sun overhead, the streets quieter, and citizens, whether in Rome or a distant province, united by the gentle pull of the midday lull. You realize that the siesta's spread reflects a blend of necessity, habit, and cultural influence, a living thread linking city, countryside, and colony. Public spaces in Rome doubled as unofficial nap zones, offering respite to citizens who couldn't retreat to private villas. You trudged through the Forum, noticing benches beneath colonnades and shaded garden areas near fountains, where merchants, scribes, and even politicians steal moments of rest. Historians still argue whether these spaces were intentionally designed for repose or simply appropriated by observant citizens, but their use is well documented. Quirky tidbit: graffiti found near public benches sometimes humorously warns against snoring too loudly, suggesting a playful awareness that communal naps could be both social and slightly disruptive. You can imagine a sleepy merchant jostled awake by a fellow napper, sharing a brief knowing smile before returning to drowsy oblivion. Roman baths, too, were more than places for cleansing. They were arenas for relaxation and napping. You notice citizens reclining after warm soaks, letting the gentle heat and the quiet murmur of water lull them into rest. Even urban gardens, often meticulously landscaped with trees and fountains, provided pockets of tranquility amid the bustling streets. This public accessibility reinforced social norms. The siesta was not purely private indulgence, but a shared cultural rhythm, offering everyone from elite to laborer a sanctioned period of pause. You sense that these spaces were carefully balanced, offering comfort, maintaining order, and integrating rest seamlessly into urban life. By mid-afternoon, the city pulses quietly, a mosaic of shadows, soft murmurs, and gentle breathing. You realize that Rome's architecture and public planning didn't just house people, it orchestrated their daily rhythm, blending necessity, leisure, and social cohesion into a living, breathing design. Romans believed the siesta had profound health benefits, intertwining physiology with cultural practice. You trudge through imagined homes where physicians advise citizens to rest after the midday meal, claiming it aids digestion, balances the humors, and restores vitality. Historians still argue whether these medical endorsements were genuinely influential or more rhetorical support for a socially ingrained habit, but the association between health and napping is undeniable. Quirky tidbit: some texts describe using specific aromas, like crushed herbs or scented oils, to enhance sheer nap quality, suggesting that a Roman siesta could double as aromatherapy. You picture a reclining citizen inhaling the subtle fragrance of lavender or rosemary, eyelids heavy, the mind easing into quietude while the body recharges. The concept of moderation underpinned these health practices. Too long a nap might induce lethargy, while skipping it entirely could diminish afternoon productivity. You notice that this careful calibration mirrors modern sleep science, even if Romans framed it through humors and natural philosophy rather than lab studies. Even public health structures accommodated the siesta. Shaded streets, fountains, and garden alcoves were more than aesthetic. They supported rest in alignment with the city's rhythms, creating a communal environment conducive to well-being. You sense that health, comfort, and social order were intertwined, as citizens collectively followed natural cues to restore mind and body. By the end of the pause, both individuals and the city feel renewed. You realize the siesta wasn't indulgence, but an early understanding of circadian alignment, energy management, and holistic health, lessons that resonate across millennia. Long before Modern sleep science quantified what Romans intuitively practiced. Roman literature frequently poked fun at or celebrated the siesta, offering a window into cultural attitudes. You trudge past imagined street corners where graffiti mocks snoozing citizens, alongside poems and plays praising the art of post-lunch repose. Historians still argue whether satire reflected general social sentiment or merely the perspective of witty elites, but the presence of naps in literature underscores their ubiquity. Quirky tidbit. Some comedic playwrights depicted characters so committed to the siesta that they slept through emergencies, meetings, or even minor disasters, a playful exaggeration highlighting both laziness and discipline in human form. You can picture a stage crowded with over-reclined citizens, one snoring so loudly that a neighbor's cat leaps in protest, eliciting laughter from the audience. Even graffiti on walls around the forum hints at citizen interactions with naps, doodles of reclining figures, brief poetic laments over lost sleep, and playful reminders to neighbors about respecting nap spaces. You sense that humor functioned as both social commentary and bonding, turning rest into a cultural touchstone. Literary treatment extended to philosophy and moral discourse. Authors debated whether the siesta nurtured virtue by encouraging reflection or undermined diligence by promoting idleness. You realize these debates, though framed in antiquity, mirror modern conversations about work-life balance and the role of rest in productivity. By the afternoon's end, laughter, critique, and contemplation merge. You feel that literature didn't merely record the siesta, it shaped perceptions, creating a playful, reflective dialogue that reinforced its place in Roman life, proving that naps were culturally alive as much as they were physically restorative. Festivals and public celebrations often adapted to the siesta, blending rest with ritual. You trudge through a bustling forum, now quieted under the sun, as artisans, dancers, and priests pause mid-performance, allowing the city to breathe. Historians still argue whether this alignment with rest was intentional planning or a natural outcome of heat and energy cycles, but the timing of events clearly respected the afternoon lull. Quirky tidbit. In some accounts, performers would schedule acts around siesta hours, saving the most energetic dances or dramatic recitations for late afternoon when audiences were fully awake again. You can picture a troupe reclining between sets, sipping water or wine, and exchanging playful comments about the snoozing spectators they'd soon entertain. Even religious rituals observe pauses during the hottest hours, transforming nap times into contemplative intervals. You notice priests and devotees in shaded temple courtyards meditating quietly, letting sunbeams filter through columns while incense curls around them. The city itself seems to participate in a shared rhythm, balancing celebration, devotion, and rest. In literature and commentary, the festival siesta overlap is sometimes depicted humorously, with citizens dozing during ceremonial music or spilling wine in sleep's soft grip, reminding everyone that even sacred duties must bend to human biology. You sense that these interludes reinforce the communal understanding. Rest is not weakness, but part of life's natural cadence. By late afternoon, as festivities resume and streets hum once more, you realize that the Romans had orchestrated an elegant dance between celebration and repose. The siesta was more than sleep. It was an integral thread weaving together labor, leisure, culture, and ceremony in the daily life of the empire. The siesta also shaped commerce, trade, and even politics in Rome, subtly dictating the rhythm of daily decision-making. You trudge through market stalls where vendors pause in mid-sale, shutters half closed, awaiting the return of shoppers refreshed from their midday rest. Historians still argue whether businesses structured operations around naps or simply adapted to human behavior. But the pattern is unmistakable. The city's economic pulse followed the sun. Quirky tidbit. Some merchants reportedly left small offerings, figs, wine, or coins on counters as playful bribes to encourage neighbors or customers to pause and for a nap, creating a shared culture of indulgence and social compliance. You can picture a stallholder reclining in a shaded doorway, one eye open to watch the world, a cat perched on his lap, and the faint smell of figs in the air. Even political assemblies respected the rhythm. Senators and magistrates, aware of fatigue and the digestive lull, often scheduled debates and hearings for late morning or late afternoon, letting the siesta create a natural pause. You sense that this shared downtime may have contributed to clearer thinking, calmer discussions, and a more harmonious urban life. Public entertainment, too, followed the same flow. Theaters, amphitheaters, and training grounds observed the midday lull, timing events to accommodate rest while maintaining audience engagement. You realize that the siesta was not just about individual health, but civic efficiency, a mechanism woven into the social, economic, and political fabric of the empire. By the time afternoon wanes and streets awaken, you feel that every aspect of Roman life, work, politics, commerce, and culture, was synchronized with rest. The siesta was a masterstroke of social engineering, turning biological need into societal cohesion. The final stretch of the day reveals the full artistry of the Roman siesta as life resumes in gentle crescendo. You trudge through streets now awakening with renewed energy. Merchants reopen shutters, artisans resume labor, and children's laughter threads through the air, all harmonizing in rhythm restored by rest. Historians still argue whether this carefully timed ebb and flow was intentional civic planning or an emergent adaptation, but its effect is undeniable. A society in balance. Quirky tidbit. Some accounts note citizens carrying small cushions or mats through the streets, allowing them to catch a brief doze anywhere, from garden benches to colonnaded porticos, a testament to how ingrained and portable the siesta had become. You can picture a hurried noble reclining briefly against a marble pillar, a sly smile as he joins the quiet rebellion of rest amidst urban hustle. The siesta influenced rhythm, health, and social interaction, merging practicality with pleasure. Families, neighbors, and strangers shared quiet courtyards or garden nooks, their synchronized rest fostering connection as well as recovery. You sense that the siesta was as much a social glue as it was a personal luxury, reinforcing norms, courtesy, and community awareness. As the afternoon light softens, commerce resumes, philosophical discussions flourish anew, and the city hums with renewed vitality. You feel the invisible thread weaving rest, productivity, and civic life into a seamless tapestry. Rome's siesta was more than a habit. It was a sophisticated system, elegantly balancing human biology with social, economic, and cultural needs. The sun dips lower, casting long golden shadows across the marble and stone of the city. You feel the soft exhale of the streets, a collective sigh from citizens returning to life after their midday pause. The fountains ripple quietly, the breeze brushes through columns, and even the birds seem to echo the calm. In this gentle twilight, the rhythm of Rome feels palpable, work and rest intertwined, creating a cadence that carries the city forward without haste or chaos. You imagine the tired artisan stretching, the philosopher opening his eyes, the merchant adjusting his wares, all reborn by the simple act of rest. The siesta was more than sleep. It was reflection, restoration, and an unspoken social contract. Even those who resisted its lure eventually participated in its subtle power, recognizing that the pause refreshed both body and mind. As darkness approaches, the city's pulse slows once more, but now in preparation for evening rituals, conversations, and leisure. You can almost hear the faint echoes of laughter, the soft shuffle of feet, and the distant hum of conversation mingling with the night air. This daily cycle of repose and renewal reminds you that even the greatest empire, with all its grandeur and ambition, depended on small human acts, on recognizing the necessity of pause, the value of reflection, and the quiet magic of rest. And so, as your own eyes grow heavy, you feel a connection across time to the citizens of Rome, reclining in shadowed courtyards, listening to the same gentle rhythms, finding the same calm. The siesta, timeless and universal, whispers a simple truth. Rest is not indulgence, but life's elegant balance.